Hey folks, David McKnight here, best-selling author of The Power of Zero, Look Before You Lerp, The Volatility Shield, and Tax-Free Income for Life. Today is the worldwide launch for my latest book, The Infinity Code. This book has an important economic principle with real-world implications that's couched within an exciting, suspenseful, Dan Brown-style plot. You can purchase it in paperback or Kindle starting today, September 27th, only on Amazon. Take a listen to Chapter 1. The Infinity Code by David McKnight, Chapter 1. Monday, October 26, 2020. The coral-encrusted wreckage of the MV Captain Keith Tibbets lay jackknifed on its side like a train car that had cartwheeled off the tracks. A Cold War-era gift from the Soviet Union to the Cuban Navy in 1984, the ship had later been purchased and renamed by the Cayman Island government and scuttled nearly 200 yards off the northern shore of Cayman Brac. With its otherworldly outcroppings of brain coral and pink tube sponge and its dizzying array of sea life, the ship had become a hotspot for divers from across the globe. Wolfgang Hessler fluttered up over the railing of the Tibbet stern and kicked his way toward the midpoint of the ship where in 2004 Hurricane Ivan had unceremoniously torn it in two. Once at the breach, he craned his head upward and saw the 38-foot Delta Canaveral dive boat rocking gently on the surface nearly 60 feet above his head. From behind the ship's stern, he had watched as three divers kicked to the surface and boarded the vessel. Off to his left, the ship's conning tower loomed over him like an algae-encrusted automaton from a bygone era. Its corroded hatches, beacons, and antennae had all but capitulated to the unrelenting underwater ecosystem. He worked his way up the face of the tower and paused at its apex, just 20 feet below the surface. He could now hear the faint thrumming of music pounding on the surface above. He looked down at the Panerai dive watch on his wrist and turned the bezel to 5 minutes. He'd have to decompress briefly before making the final push to the boat's hull. As he waited, he took in the massive corroded ship beneath him and marveled to think that it would soon have a companion, albeit a much smaller one. When the decompression period was over, he pushed off the conning tower and made the final few kicks to the submerged portion of the bow. Working quickly, he produced a wrench from his dive bag and affixed it to the hull plug and twisted. After a few turns, the plug yanked free and he saw a trail of bubbles issue forth and wend its way up the side of the boat. Unbeknownst to the three divers on deck, water was now coursing into the ship's hull. He then kicked to the stern and removed the boat's second plug. He waited another 10 minutes until he heard the first cry of alarm from the deck above. Within seconds, he jettisoned his oxygen tanks, flippers, and dive bag, grabbed hold of the dive boat's ladder, and took the rungs two at a time. As he climbed over the stern, chaos unfolded before him. One of the divers was yelling frantically into his radio while the other two tried to identify the source of the leak. Amid the harried panic, none of them noticed him step onto the deck and produce a gun from his vest. He pulled the trigger once and the man on the radio fell heavily. The other two divers wheeled their heads in his direction, their faces awash with terror. He pulled the trigger 2 more times and both men hit the deck with a thud. "Not to worry, my friends," he announced. "These are saxitoxin-laced darts, and the paralysis, I can assure you, will only be temporary. I'm sad to report, however, that I disabled your bilge pump last night, so it's only a question of time before your boat founders." He looped his arms under the armpits of the diver at the radio and propped him up against the bridge. The man's head lolled to the side, but he could see his assailant out of the corner of his eye. "The wolf," the man muttered, his voice thick with contempt. "Senator Hawthorne," the wolf replied. "It's been nearly 25 years. A shame we had to meet again under such trying circumstances." "Why are you doing this?" the senator managed. "Why?" the wolf laughed. Just then, the boat jerked downward as seawater sluiced over its sides, pulling the senator's companions into a sloshing, tangled heap just outside the bridge. "I'll be brief since it appears that time is short," the wolf said, nodding toward the cascade of water that was now gushing into the boat's deck. "Diocletian is not pleased." Even through his paralysis, the senator managed to train his gaze on the wolf. "What are you talking about?" he asked. "As the Senate Minority Leader in the U.S. Senate, we had such high hopes for you. You figured so prominently in all of our plans. But then you seem to have lost your way." "Poppycock," the senator spat. With that, the wolf pulled a small digital device from his vest. He cleared his throat and read, "Wall Street Journal, May 17th, 2018. It's a pipe dream and we adopt it at our own peril. The New York Times, August 27th, 2019. It could only work in a fairy tale universe where the laws of economics have been suspended." The wolf paused to let the words sink in, his face tight with bitterness and disappointment. I could have just as easily cut all your air hoses this morning. At a depth of 85 feet, you might have made it to the surface, but I assure you the bend is no way to die. But I wanted to make sure you appreciated the depths of your betrayal. What's to become of me? The senator asked, fear controlling the portions of his face that had yet to succumb to the toxin. Well, it really is hard to keep a dive boat afloat if you fail to attach not one, but both of a boat's plugs. The media will chalk it up to a careless and tragic oversight. The world will mourn the talented politician who was taken from the world far too soon. Just then, the boat lurched again, this time more violently as the ocean sucked it deeper into its maw. The wolf could hear the groan of the other divers as they crunched against the outer shell of the bridge. The wolf clawed his way past the divers towards the top of the deck that was now pitched at a 45-degree angle. He mounted the stern and then turned to face the senator. The water line was rising steadily up the senator's neck as he tried in vain to jerk his limbs into motion. How dare you? I'm the minority leader of the U.S. Senate, he gasped. I'll be the second most powerful person in the country within a year. You can't do this. You need me. The wolf gave his head a sad little shake. All Diocletian asked was that you live up to your oath. You were well aware of the consequences for its violation. Adieu, Senator. The wolf winked, skimmed a salute off the side of his head, and then dove into the water. In the next moment, the last vestiges of the boat were swallowed up by the bubbling surf.